I'm back from the brink, from the precipice. It's been what? It's been like 2 weeks. It's been over a week since we've done it. It's been forever. I can't make excuses other than I just work has been crazy. It just has not been. This is not my main. I have a real job, guys, and sometimes that takes priority over my classic guitar rock empire. But I'm back today. I thank you all for your patience and thank you all for tuning in. If you're joining us on X or YouTube or Facebook, thank you for being here. We're going to do a quick update. I got a great email from my sister. I'm going to share an email from my sister with you guys. Hope that's okay with you. I hope you've been well too, by the way. So let's jump right in from the Do We Care file. Some people really care. I'm not sure if I care, but I'm going to share it with you. The surviving members of the Sex Pistols are getting back together, but not with the former Johnny Rotten. So the Sex Pistols getting back together without Johnny Rotten is kind of like CCR getting back together without John Fogerty, or the Heartbreakers getting back together without Tom Petty. Who cares? And I'm not trying to be snarky. Does it matter? It's for a good cause. So guitarist Steve Jones, bassist Paul Cook, and bassist Glenn Matlock, two basses, will play the band's iconic debut album, Nevermind the Bullocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, during a pair of August benefit shows. Frank Carter will be stepping in for John Lydon or Johnny Rotten, whatever his name is. The two camps split over 2022's Pistol. Lydon sued to stop their music from being used in the Disney FX television biopic series, which was based on a memoir by Jones. Lydon later said he faced financial ruin after losing the lawsuit. Quote, "This entire juggernaut of confusion has cost me millions," he said. "Such a hideous, nasty onslaught. I never expected Steve, Paul, and Glenn to be that evil. And we never even sat down and had a conversation about it." Lydon also disavowed a subsequent Sex Pistols compilation called The Original Recordings, describing it as substandard and distancing himself from its production. Lydon he's a mercurial chap. I think we can say that. We've got two more mercurial people coming up. Say mercurial 10 times real fast. Here's my friend Will checking in. Will, so good to see you. Of course, you're not allowed to say anything, but it is good to see you. I'll be seeing you in person this summer. Have I told you that? Yeah, get ready. I'm probably going to come to your house. Unless you've moved. But Will, thanks. Thanks for joining me today. So anyways, the guys without Johnny are getting together to perform August 13th and 14th at London's Bush Hall, with proceeds to benefit the legendary local venue. They said, quote, smaller music venues are the lifeblood of new music. It's in these intimate spaces that raw talent gets a chance to shine, where bands can really connect with their audiences, and where the spirit of live music truly comes alive. So we need to keep them going. All right. Will says, I'm always welcome. So that's great. Awesome. I'll see. I'll be talking with you, Will. All right. Great. Sad news. Ed Mann, the longtime percussionist for Frank Zappa, has reportedly died at the age of 70. This happened over the weekend, actually. Mann's passing was revealed on social media by fellow musician and Zappa collaborator Chad Wackerman. Quote, "Rest easy, my old friend Ed Mann," Wackerman wrote. "A masterful and brilliant percussionist. He could read anything Frank Zappa threw at him, and I never once heard him make a mistake. He toured with Frank for 11 years and went on to record with many of the greats. Ed was a creative force and a great teacher and will be missed," end quote. Now, this is a guy. Now, Zappa, if you've ever seen a Zappa show, I mean, it's not for everyone. I mean, it's not accessible. Clearly always had very talented members. Steve Vai, of course, came up through Zappa's organization. Warren Curachillo, is that how you pronounce it, who was in Missing Persons. He came up through Zappa's organization. Number of people. I think Adrian Belew played with Zappa. Is that right? Am I right about that? Anyways, a lot of notable, very talented musicians came up through Zappa's organization. Very eclectic. Frank Zappa famously, well, here's another mercurial individual, not always the easiest guy to work with. Very demanding. It's great to watch interviews where Steve Vai talks about auditioning for Frank Zappa and what it was like playing with him. But at the same time, Zappa was a guy that he told it like he saw it, he didn't mess around. But our condolences to the family of Ed Mann and those close to him on his passing. Now, another mercurial figure, Ritchie Blackmore, one of my favorites, by the way. Not so sure he would be fun to work with from what I hear, but just a great, talented guy. He recently was in an interview where he talked about his decision to step away from Deep Purple the second time, right? In the 90s. He left, obviously, Deep Purple in the mid-70s and started Rainbow. Well, then Deep Purple got together again in the 80s. They were together for like 10 years, and then he left again in the 90s. Of course, Satriani came in and replaced him, and then eventually Steve Morse, and Steve Morse was with them for like 30 years. And he's recently left. But anyways, Blackmore detailed his decision to step away from Deep Purple. And let me tell you what he says. The guitarist left Deep Purple for good in 1993. He then briefly rebooted Rainbow. Remember, he came back and they did one Rainbow album, which is actually a pretty good album. What's it called? The Stranger in Us, something like that. I can't remember. It's the one with Doogie White. I love Doogie, and it's actually a pretty good album. But he says, quote, "The stress was from the traveling to do with rock and roll, the continual trying to come up with different augmentations of heavy riffs, which can be boring. I was getting stale playing the same type of music, heavy rock for the sake of playing heavy rock." So he left. He says, quote, "I have always been interested in melodic rock, melodies in general," he said. "Toward the end of Purple, it was just being loud for the sake of being loud. So when I heard Renaissance music, there were so many incredible melodies that struck a chord with me. That was such a relief in many ways. So I jumped off the monster train just to play some melodies more organically. Plus, his Quaker hat, worked better in a Renaissance band." Knight, Candace Knight, is now Ronnie's wife and his partner in Blackmore's Night. You get it? You got Blackmore, you got Candace Knight, Blackmore's Night, right? She's very talented, great singer. She contributed to The Stranger in Us All, the Rainbow album from 95. They got married in 2008. She said it really began as a personal journey and escape from what the rock and roll world had become for Ritchie in the late 90s, she said. Having had such success in the 60s, throughout the 70s and 80s, he was used to creative freedom and individuality of bands. But by the late 90s, when he reformed Rainbow, the corporations wanted approval over everything. Record companies wanted a say in titles of songs, demos, to hear the direction of the album. It wasn't what he was used to dealing with at all. So while the other band members in Rainbow were doing their tracks, we were sitting fireside in a farmhouse studio in Massachusetts, playing acoustic guitar and writing songs for our own pleasure. When our friends heard them and said they loved them was when we decided to put them out for the rest of the world. But it continues to be a path of stress release from the pressures of society and form of escapism, not only for us when we are creating the music, but for those listening to it as well. So, and to be honest, if you check out Blackmore's Night, it's pretty cool. It's cool. I mean, it's Renaissance music. It's medieval music. And if Ritchie likes that, then great. Ritchie did a weird thing about 5 years ago. Do you remember? Remember, he reformed Rainbow again to do one short tour. and they called it a rainbow reunion and didn't have a single Rainbow member join him. How weird is that? I mean, he could have gotten Joe Lynn Turner. He could have gotten Graham Bonnet. He could have got both of them. This was after Dio had died, so he couldn't have gotten Dio. But why wouldn't he have gotten either of those guys? Would have happily joined him. He gets Ronnie Ramirez, Ronnie Romero. He gets Ronnie Romero, who's a great singer, as his singer, which is cool. But why wouldn't he have gotten Joe Lynn Turner or Graham Bonnet or both? Perfect opportunity. And then he gets some drummer with a mohawk. He could have, nothing against Mohawks. But when I think of Rainbow, I don't think of Mohawks. And he gets a completely different band and calls it a Rainbow reunion. It was weird. Anyways, but I've always been a fan of Richie's playing. Always been a fan of his playing. We've talked a lot about sampling, artists that will sample, in the 80s, this was a big deal. There were tons of rap songs that would sample Van Halen or Bad Company or whatever and put these rock riffs in their songs. And they were kind of cool, right? It was kind of cool to hear that. Famously, recently, what's his name? Kanye wanted to use some Black Sabbath in his, and Ozzy said, heck no, you ain't using any Black Sabbath in your music. Well, Steve Miller has actually praised Eminem for his sampling of the Steve Miller Band's Abracadabra. So apparently Eminem has a new single out called Houdini. I haven't even heard it. And it samples Abracadabra. Steve's all for it. He says, hey, Em, there is a long chain of stories, poetry, lyrics, and musical roots that have crossed cultures and generations, inspiring the whole world for hundreds of years. And in all those lines of thought, music and rhythm, there are special artists who take it all in and create new original ideas from their own feelings and experiences. You are one of those timeless originators, building something new on a long musical legacy of original artists. Miller cited several of those he believes to be original artists, including Les Paul, Jimmy Reed, the Beatles, Chuck Berry, John Coltrane, and Miles Davis, among others. Quote, I've always tried to credit, honor, and respect the major influencers in my life, and to always credit, honor, royalties, and share knowledge of their work through my own work, Miller continued. I didn't know it would be this way when I was a kid trying to make a living playing music and making records. I only knew I had to respect the art that came before me and fight for it too among all the crooks, thieves, and imposters. He goes on to thank Eminem and all of this and to Eminem's credit, right? He's one that has always been very upfront about his influences and giving credit where it's due. Unlike bands like Led Zeppelin, who would just steal from other. And I hate to say that because I love Led Zeppelin, but Led Zeppelin would literally just steal lyrics or songs from blues artists and say they wrote it. I mean, that's what they did. So fortunately, Eminem is not one who did that. And Miller is honored for his song Abracadabra to be sampled in this new rap song Houdini by Eminem. There you go. Let me read an email. This is from my sister Tammy. Tammy, her husband, Mark, my brother-in-law, huge Beatles fan. And that's kind of what this email is about. So let me just share it with you. Peel back the curtain. Hi, Jeremy. I'm just catching up on CGR and listening to the May 17th update. Here are a couple of things about Paul McCartney. As you know, Mark's life was greatly influenced by the Beatles. The music in our home was often that of the Beatles and that era. Our kids are all big Beatles fans and know the words to a lot of their songs, even though they were written decades before my kids were born. In 2014, shortly after we moved, they lived in St. George, Utah. Mark and I saw Paul in concert in Salt Lake City. Having him perform so close to us, we knew we couldn't pass up the chance. It was an amazing show, and we went for my birthday. It was incredible to see someone who was mom's age. My mom, as you know, just passed away. She was 81. It was an amazing show, and well, let's see. It was incredible to see someone who was mom's age with so much energy moving around the stage, singing all of his Beatles and Wings songs. What a show. As you may know, I can probably count on two hands the number of actual concerts I've attended. They are just not my thing. But this was pretty cool and easy to see why he still has so many fans and not just old farts like Mark and I. Now, and he does have many fans, old farts and non-old farts. Now, let me tell you about Jared's experience. Jared is my nephew, her son. When he was getting his MBA in Florida, this must have been 2015, Paul performed at his college. He did a big concert for the whole school, but also did a special event where they held a lottery. The special event had only a couple of hundred people and was held in a small auditorium. The attendees were able to ask questions and spend more time with him in a bit more intimate setting. I picture it kind of a story behind the songs kind of thing. Jared was one of the students whose names was drawn out of thousands of students. Cool, right? So one more thing. My sister is a social worker at a VA, a big VA hospital. One more thing. Just yesterday, I was working with one of my veterans. He's an old rock and roll fellow, Vietnam veteran, really neat man. He has 3 or 4 guitars in his room. I told him about CGR and sent him the link, and he seemed interested. If you have a minute, say hi to Ted at Southern Utah Veterans Home. Ted, thank you so much for your service, my friend. Thank you so much. And if you're listening, hello, appreciate it. So hello to Ted at Southern Utah Veterans Home. And yes, thank you for your service. Maybe say how cool I am, and he is lucky to know me. You are lucky to know my sister. My sister Tammy is awesome. She says, I love you. I will see you this summer. I am going on a cruise with my sister and her husband and my dad. So it'll be me, my dad, my sister Tammy, and Mark. And I'm sure we'll talk about classic rock and the Beatles while we're on that cruise. We often do. So anyways, Tammy, thank you so much for your email. Any of you can shoot me an email, classicguitarrock@mail.com. A quick update on the radio station. If you haven't checked us out, do it. Go to classicguitarrock.com. You can click on a link that takes straight to the radio station or straight to the podcast. It's super easy. Thank you. This week should be better than the past few weeks, so hopefully we'll get together a few times this week. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for your support. We'll do it all again later. Live long and prosper. Take care and bye-bye.